You're listening to Open for Discussion, where, man, y'all probably shouldn't have said that. It tends to happen. Let's start the show.
715 East Music Group.
Welcome to Open for Discussion, where any and everything is on the table to be discussed. I'm your host, Albert. I got my brothers from another mother with me. I got my boy, Diddy Rowe, a.k.a.
Bonsoir.
Oh.
All right. I got my boy, Cleek the Geek.
What's good?
And my boy, G-Dub.
Yo.
Well, fellas, first of all, I want to say welcome.
Welcome, man.
Appreciate y'all. I don't get a chance to say it publicly, so I'm saying it publicly. I really appreciate y'all giving up your time to come do the show, and it's gonna pay off in the end.
He's in one of them sentimental moods today, fellas.
All right, here we go.
Expect some waterworks.
He's gonna cry again. This is a crying episode. Yeah.
Oh man, you guys are jerks. But what a time to be alive, fellas.
Great.
We're in a society now that anything that you've done or anything that you've said can really come back to bite you, even if you didn't say it in that capacity. Mm-hmm. So what I'm talking about is the cancel culture that we're living in right now, and it's really, I don't really know what my opinion is on it, because it's somewhat, sometimes it works out, and then sometimes it just seems like you're just being real petty. So my question right now is, with the cancel culture the way it is, and the premise that it's in right now, is it actually preventing a lot of the hate speech or the incorrect thinking, or is it actually putting the message further out as far as to the masses? What's your thoughts on that?
Man, it's mixed, man. It's mixed for me. I think, I don't know. I see them both. I think it is making us more conscious of what we're saying. You know what I mean? But I think in doing so, it brings more attention to it, right? So it's kind of doing both with the question. I think, I even take our last episode, we were talking about transgender, and I was just I'm just super careful the whole time. I make sure I say every word right or ask for the correction, because I just know, it's such a sensitive time where you have to literally watch each word that comes out of your mouth and understand the context of it, because it can come back 10 years later and bite you, and cause you income, cause you opportunity, all of that stuff. So
let me interject. So are you doing that because of cancel culture, or just because you're a decent human being and you consider that it's not beneath you to respect somebody?
Right. That's a good question you ask. So I think I'm doing it for a little bit of both. I think I see myself as a decent human being, but, when we, and because of that, I know that I may say things in a joking manner, and my intention my intention is never to offend or hurt anyone. But I understand with the cancel culture that that can be misconstrued and used against me if I say something that can come off as insensitive. Now, to me, I was like, I was just making light of it. But my making light of can be misinterpreted. So it's causing me to be extra conscious about what I'm saying. Even though I know and believe that I'm a good human being, I'm not, I'm saying that, hey, I'm not going to intentionally, ostracize people for what they believe or what they do. But if I make light of it, my making light of it may come off to any individual that, could be offended by it. They may think that I'm being malicious with it. So, that's what it got me cautious of. It's just man, you got to be extra careful. But I think because of that, it is kind of spreading it more, because everyone's being extra careful what they're saying, everyone's thinking about and just continuing to make whatever that topic, they're making it big because they have to be careful for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm going to go on the record. I'm not a fan of cancel culture. I don't believe in cancel culture. Anyone who promotes cancel culture is not, we don't share similar beliefs. Cancel culture, to me, puts a person in a place to where they're unredeemable. And I think you look at a person's total body of work. I mean, in today's age, it's so easy to canonize a person based on one phrase that could be taken out of context, or even like in Elizabeth Warren's case, in these political ads, could literally be doctored. And so all of a sudden they cancel. Well, we don't even know if it's true or not.
Right.
First off, but I mean, it's just this knee jerk and immediate reaction to new societal trends, the hashtag cancel. I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah.
And again, a person is always redeemable. I firmly believe that. No matter, I ain't gonna say no matter what they do, but in the eyes of Christianity, you're redeemable.
Right.
Period.
Right.
So if you look at the sensitivities that are now more prevalent in society, and the ability for someone to be villainized, in minutes. You say something, it's circulated, it's viral just that quickly.
Right. Even if it's true or not.
Exactly. Whether it's true or not, I think you have to be more cautious before you hashtag cancel someone. Yeah. And honestly, I don't even know what really cancel means, or if people even stick to it, because our attention shifts so quickly. You forget about something a week later. In most cases, a month later, 2-3 weeks later, however long it takes. But I don't believe in canceling anyone, silencing anyone's voice. And as far as hate speech goes, hate speech has been around and it will remain. What I do appreciate is there are now abilities to where people can see what a person says and take it at face value, judging by a collection of their works. Because if I want to know if this person really said that, I mean, you can look, or you can utilize the internet to look up their body of work, look up their history. Is this repetitive behavior? And in most cases, that person is going to respond. They'll let you know if they said it, if it was taken out of context, and you can decide whether how you proceed from there. But a statement, people say things, whether they mean it or not. To me, that's really an individual's perception of of how they're going to take it. But if you cancel someone, you never give them an opportunity to apologize. Like, I can say some things that I mean. I can get enlightened, get new information, and have a change in beliefs and a change in perspective. So now when I come back and apologize, now hashtag they cancel. That's stupid. So I'm not a fan of it.
So you're suggesting that they should give, before they get to that state of you're canceled, which is what's happening. They cancel before you can even apologize. At least say, hey, you said this is offensive. We would like an apology. You think that would be like a good way to approach it before getting to that level?
Again, maybe my perception of what cancel culture is differs from what society may consider it. But what I perceive cancel culture to be, it's like they cut off, period. For henceforth now and forevermore. They have no value. They have no voice. We don't want to hear from them regardless of what good they do, where they change. And I would hope we're not the same people that we were 20 years ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but again, what I did 20 years ago could very well have impact on me today.
Right.
If that's the reality of what we do. Now, if I did that 20 years ago, that wasn't me. I apologize for doing that. And look, I'm moving forward. And if you can't move forward with me, that's on you. Yeah, but I'm not that same person. That's what I hope that we could do as a society, and not hashtag cancel people.
Yeah. No. So I mean, I know you're going to go, Wayne. I just say this. Earlier episode last year, we talked about R. Kelly. So I found myself on the end of that council culture, right?
I can't listen to him.
Right. But so this is a good point, because I think what happens when a person isn't apologetic or they're not owning up to something that could be very much true, how do we approach that? Because I understand, from what I gathered with that approach to cancel culture, so to speak, was okay. This is an injustice that's happening against African American women. No one is speaking up about it, so we're going to collectively deny. We're going to basically protest this situation by trying to silence his voice because the people around him are enabling him, right? So in that case, now once again, no one has facts. This thing is still going on, so I'm leaving the whole thing alone. But in those kind of scenarios where if someone did something but they're not apologetic of it, it's very clear that they did it, and you're calling for like, hey, what were your thoughts on that? Are you still that same person? The person like, whatever. Do you think it's warranted then?
It's warranted then because they shown no remorse. Now, I wouldn't say that the complete cancel is warranted, but you can, at that point, you're a public figure, and so if you're bold enough to make certain statements or do certain things in your life, then you got to be bold enough to accept the punishment.
Yeah, I got you.
So if someone comes out, to B's point, if someone comes out and apologizes and says, "Hey, that was not my intention," how are you feeling that you should be able to tell them that was their intention?
Yeah,
you don't know what their intentions were.
Yeah.
So I think if someone comes out and says that, "Hey, yeah, I said it. It is what it is. Deal with it," then that person has to have the understanding that I'm going to get a whole lot of visceral hate. Mm-hmm. But if the person came out and clearly said that, look, that's not what I meant.
Right,
these
I
are
agree.
jokes. You're taking it out of context. Okay, back off.
Should be the end of it there. Yeah,
it should be the end of it, but we know it's not.
Yeah. Word.
Yeah, cancel culture is, I believe, foolishness. At the end of the day, it is a lot of times cancel culture thrives off of what someone has done in the past, and even honestly, it thrives off of mistakes or bad choices that people have made. In the court of public opinion, everybody wants to be a judge until it's them, and then they want to be the defense attorney. Right? I didn't mean it. I didn't do it, but publicly, we will literally nail somebody to the cross for something that they said 20 years ago. Or even if they said it 20 minutes ago and it's like, oh, this person is canceled. It's like, does that person even know that they said something bad? Right? Like it's really, really tough. Like, this is a good example / bad example. What's the girl's name? She's on Jane the Virgin, a Hispanic girl who is she was
singing the song.
Yeah, she was singing Lauryn Hill. Right? So
sorry, I don't watch Jane the Virgin. Hey, what is that? Explain it to them.
I'm just trying to.
I have no clue what the show is. I just know that she's the lead actress on there. My wife watches it.
Hey, Cleet stepped up quick, boy. Yeah, man.
Could y'all enlighten brothers help us, identify what Jane the Virgin is? Is that a show on Netflix?
It's a show on CW. Y'all know I don't watch shows on CW.
I only know about it because it was in the news about her saying the N-word in the song.
Okay.
Continue. Wow, man. Anyway,
all right, just go.
So,
for now. All right.
You know what late nights look like at your house, buddy.
All right, don't get canceled.
Yeah, bro. Why are you trying to shame these people? Jane the Virgin? You are.
So Gina Rodriguez is her name. She was singing a clip on Instagram or Twitter, one of the two, and it was Lauryn Hill, and she said the N-word in the song. And we rioted, right? Like, we rallied, black people rallied. You can't say that. We went off on her. And she came out and she was like, I apologize for being offensive. And they were like, nah, she canceled. I'm like, okay, all right. This girl, she's Hispanic now, right? So I'm going to give you my classifications of people who can and cannot say the N-word. Obviously, if you're black, you can say whatever you want to. Hispanics.
That's not true, but
Not true.
Well, listen, you could. I honestly, you gonna say it, and I'm not gonna think like, oh, okay, you shouldn't be saying
For
that.
you can say-
yeah.
okay.
For me. So, but Hispanic people have had their own struggle. It's not the same struggle, but I grew up with a lot of Hispanic people who, in essence, were part of black culture. They weren't black themselves, but they were,
Grew up in the same community.
Yeah, same community. We experienced similar discriminations. Like white people that didn't like us didn't like them. You know what I mean? So it's a part of that black and brown culture, right? So it's like, okay, right. And if we really want to go back, they just got off the boat before we did on the way over here. So it's like, okay, cool. Now, and white people, y'all already know how. Just don't say it. So the thing here is that we went off, like the internet went off on just completely canceling this girl. I'm like, for something that she said, and she came and then was like, her apology's not sincere enough. I'm like,
Exactly, yeah.
What do you want? Like, what is it that you want? And it's just too hypercritical for me, because each person, you wouldn't want that same lens on you based on things that you've done. Right. So only time I come out and truly talk against a person, if I myself, if I was going through it, I'm like, oh, yeah, I need to be got on for that. Like the whole Kevin Hart situation with the Oscars for something he said 20 years ago.
Yeah, that was
or 10 years ago. I'm like, how many of us said things 10 years ago that we look back now and said, yeah, that was stupid. I shouldn't have ever said that. Whenever and comedians, they're always, giving jokes at someone's expense, right? I mean, that's how we laugh. We're laughing at someone or something.
Comedy.
You know what I mean? So
it's like I've had the experience. So you mature to a degree where you don't even remember like your mindset.
yeah, what was I thinking?
Yeah. So I had a friend reach out to me from high school a couple of years ago, and she was like, "You still telling people to drop out of life?" I'm like,
what?
Dang, bro. Bro, you tell people to commit suicide?
bro. She's like,
Wow.
yeah. She's like, that's what you used to tell us all the time. Just drop out of life. I was like, me? Right. I couldn't believe her, but
seriously.
But that was a true memory. I had to take it for face value. I'm like, wow, I probably did say that at the time. So it just shows me like mentality, like I was in a whole different maturity wise, different place maturity wise. So
Same thing happened to me. I went to my cousin's,
that's terrible.
the girl's cousin graduation at FAMU.
Yeah.
And I saw one of the homegirls. I went to high school with her and we went to college together, right? So I saw her. I was like, hey, it's good to see you. Yada, yada. She was like, so it's so fun to get to know you now that you're not part of the Mean Boys anymore. I'm like,
The Mean
Boys?
Boys?
Like, what are you talking
Kinda
about?
like the Mean Girls?
Is this a musical? We are here to let you know that you are ugly.
I don't know where you were going.
I can tell you watch a lot of these shows.
A lot of musicals.
We saw a commercial
Girl
for
died.
the Mean Girls.
Bro, if you like it, you like it, bro. Don't let nobody discriminate against you for liking a good movie.
We judge you.
No, but it was just enlightening to me because I knew I told a lot of jokes in high school. I knew I did that, but I never thought to think how that other person felt after we went in on this person for 15, 20 minutes. And it didn't matter who you were. It was like, man, woman, boy, girl, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. We just went in on people, and we didn't think about the consequences at that time. So it's like Clete said, it's completely different mindset that a person was in, and you're going to crucify me over that now publicly? Yeah, nah. I'm sorry. You know
Cancel culture is so subjective. I look at Michael Vick as a poster child.
Oh, that was the early stages of his.
Man, this man did his time in a federal prison.
Still protesting.
Came out and became an animal rights activist. Literally, which I think he didn't have to do.
He did not have to do that.
To make amends, he did it. What he felt was necessary. Still protested this man. Still didn't want this man to work. They didn't want the man to be the recent captain of what was it?
The Pro Bowl.
The Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
Like when is it enough? When is enough? It's so subjective. There aren't any
rules to
exactly. So
parameters.
it's subjective. We cancel who we want to. We determine how long it is. We determine when they've been justified enough to cancel them.
And the thing that makes it so terrible is there's no face. right? So there's no like
internet, baby. Internet tough guys.
You see what I mean? Yeah. So it's like that's why it never ends because there's no
girls.
no unifying body that you can go to and say, all right, look, I have served my time. You know what I mean? There's just going to be someone else who comes up to do the research. They're like, yeah, he did that 20 years ago. Yeah, and they're going to keep sending.
That's why it takes people to speak out. Yeah.
Last night, my wife and I were talking about a parent at my son's school, and we were just talking about how loving she is. Like we were like, oh yeah, she's so free. You know, she's just so loving. You know, you could tell she loves everybody. And I was like, so she's being what we're supposed to be. And it really highlighted something in me. I'm like, you know what? We have to be careful as believers that we should be seen like that. Mm-hmm. We should be seen as the person that like, oh, they just absolutely love everybody. And it's like, but the truth is that we get all uppity at times within certain cases, and we're not like it. So it's important, especially as believers in this cancel culture. It's like, man, like B said, everybody's redeemable. Like this can happen to you. Like the whole Kanye West thing. When I watched people who obviously black people, I watched them ostracize them because of Donald Trump and supporting MAGA. I watched white people ostracize them because they were like, his salvation isn't real, right? Like he's not really being like that. I'm like, where is the Jesus love in all of this? You know what I mean? You know, just like across the spectrum of like, this is what I think. I get that, and I understand that a lot of people have a right to be angry, but in your anger, are you hoping for the best for this person, or are you just like completely saying that they're not going to be anything in your life? And if that's the way that people are living their lives, man, that's a really unhappy way to live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, and if you're
just
always
looking for stuff to be angry about.
Exactly. And I can't understand that. That's where the cancel culture gets when I can't stand it. It's like you're just looking to go off. You're walking, you're ticking time bomb. Oh, cancel. No. Get him out of here. I'm like,
hurt people. You're unhappy with your life, so you're trying to
cancel somebody else's life.
Basically.
So
as Clete would tell him, drop out of life.
Just give up, buddy.
Bro, that hurt my heart. I was like,
bro, that's cold, man.
I can't even see how that's a joke. I was saying that joke,
especially with all these kids committing suicide.
But 10, 15 years ago, we weren't as aware of that.
That's my
you know
point.
what I mean?
So that's what I'm saying. You got to think
100%.
about the culture and society at the time. It may have been, I ain't gonna say acceptable,
everybody's
but
life is at your fingertips right now.
Yeah,
crazy.
And you can access so much information.
The majority of the world, their life is at anyone's discretion of their fingertips. So if they want to look you up, you got this in in 1999 you were this. Let me put this out.
And that's another thing that like I was talking to a friend about. When we live our lives so publicly online through social media and other things, sharing with the world what we are doing, our highlights, we are giving them permission to dig deeper, to see other things in our lives that we probably wouldn't want them to see. And so that when that happens and those inconveniences come, we can't be mad at society for jumping on us. It's like, we invited this. We want to tweet every
your timeline.
You know what I mean? This is my life. I am looking, and it's like, okay, let me go
pull that up. Why is it up?
It's still there.
There's a picture of someone that we know, and they have a picture of their middle finger sticking up while they were young and they were angry at the world. And I love that photo because it just gives me it gives me a snapshot of where they were in their life at the time. The thing is, once this person gets up to a certain status, they need to go back and get rid of all pictures.
Here's the funny part: you already took that picture into.
Oh yeah. Well,
so this is another thing that people. Usually, it's trying to tell you, don't forget. It's like a black, but people do that, right? I wouldn't even say there might be technology out there. We already know they got the history, the website history,
the Wayback Machine,
the Wayback thing. I think there might be some tools, but what's happening? Like, you remember, so you know what's been happening with athletes. Like, they'll tweet something stupid, and then
like when they were
16. You're not fast enough.
But people are saving this stuff. Yeah. I'm like, how would you think? Like, I saw it. Let me save this. I might need this later. But people are saving your stuff
because you're already angry.
Yeah.
You're looking
You're
for
waiting.
something. You need that.
You're just
like,
scrolling through. You're like, I
need
can't
that
believe he
fuel.
said this. Okay, let me screenshot this.
You're fueled by hate.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
just like
I
you
guess-
looking every
Which is-
morning. Your mission is to get up, find something that you can put out later on to make
Yeah.
somebody else angry.
That's a good point, dude.
And I think that you perfectly articulated why I am completely and not in agreement with the cancel culture, because it's fueled by hate.
Yeah.
And if anything is done, whether it's when it's fueled by hate, then I can't be a part
Yeah,
of it.
because there's no real reason behind it. It's just
Because if you really
Just
cared about the
pure
person,
hate.
you would go to them first, or you would try to find a way
is
to go
what
to
B is
them
saying.
directly.
Yeah, you say, hey, man, this offended me. You know, what are your thoughts on it? Let the person get a chance to apologize or let you know that they're in a different place.
or accept their apology when they make
Oh, yeah,
public
yeah.
a public
Yeah, you say,
apology.
"All right, thank you
they
for-"
didn't hide. They came out, whether you feel like it was coerced or
Yeah, that's
or
the thing. They
you know
wanted a
or
certain
whatever.
way. They wanted us. They want
Like
you.
what is the right
If you
way?
cry, that cry's fake.
Yeah. So it's like, well,
If you
want
say
me,
it regular,
you want
oh,
me to call
enough
you up
remorse.
personally and tell you the apology only, so you can now text
Yeah.
it out and say that, oh, he you know, they called me and they realized that what they did was wrong, but I don't believe it. That's all you're gonna do because you still fueled by hate.
My wife has this thing when we get into arguments, and I was like, babe, I take full responsibility. Is my go to. She was like, I feel like you're running the script on me. Yes, I am running the script,
Absolutely.
but I have to. I mean, this is my start to rectify whatever the situation is.
De-escalate it.
Like, how else? What other response do you want? You want me to blow up? No, you don't want me to blow up because it's gonna get worse.
But do you say that? Do you say that sincerely?
Yes, because that's my catalyst to realize like I got to start going the opposite direction. I was heading in the wrong direction. Babe, I think
Bro, you lying. You can read a script with no sincerity. You just reading.
No, that's my trick. It's like my what's the
So you calling it a trick?
conscious interrupt. You can call it.
I'm
a
just
trick.
asking, is it sincere?
It's very sincere.
Are you
Because
sure you're not just running game, bro?
what game is there to be played?
You said you're reading the script.
Yes, it is a script.
It's a-
So you
but
just
it-
try to de-escalate the wife.
You're
You're just trying to
Calm down.
Your objection is not
Responsibility.
That's it. You don't even know what I said.
Woman, calm
I'm
down.
just messing with you. Now, go ahead.
Nah, there's got to be a go-to for people in the midst of these things and that's what like PR
man.
people are for. It's like, hey, listen, here's what you need to read. Read this exactly. Hit the note cards. Don't go away from the note cards.
Kevin Hart didn't do.
Yeah, exactly.
His publicist
Yeah.
was like, no. He's like, no, I gotta tell you.
I gotta talk from my heart. Stop it. Okay, stop. Right? You done made this thing 5 times bigger than what it
Yeah,
should be.
yeah.
If you would have read the cards, everything would have been okay. And that's just that's why we have people like that in our life to help us with those things and these scripts to be able to help us de-escalate situations and move in the right direction.
But do y'all knock Kevin Hart for wanting to explain himself or explain the situation as opposed to just reading a PR?
Well, see, with
think-
Kevin Hart, I think he wasn't listening. He was more so like the fact that they brought it up. He was like, "Yo, I'm done with that. Leave that alone."
Gotcha.
And they were like, "Yo, we're not talking about the gay comment. It's about the violence attached to the gay." So he was like negating that whole part. He was just like, "Nah, man, why I can't say nothing about gay people? No, I'm done with that. I'm not that same person." Right, but you say go hit him over the head with a thingy. Like we were talking about that, which I still thought was petty. It's a joke.
It was a
He's not
complete
going to
joke.
hit his kid like that, right? But once again, that's what they were trying to shift the focus to be on, and he was ignoring that. So that's where the PR would have helped him, because the PR was just a statement that's just like a basic statement. It didn't, because what he did is he stuck to that argument and held on to that thing for a year, and then after that, he spent another year up until now apologizing for not realizing that he was talking about the wrong thing.
So,
So
we're saying it
here-
would have helped his career monetarily.
Career wise.
No.
His argument, because then if he would have listened to the PR person, he probably could have had more conversations with his team to see, okay, this is what the feedback we're getting. They could have went and did some research, like, okay, what is this about? And they're like,
Yeah.
it's about the violence. Then he could have came back, okay, all right, so listen, y'all, I'm not here anymore, right? I wouldn't say those statements like that, but I realized the statement about the violence piece, that's really negative. I don't want that attached to me as well. I would never
So
XYZ.
what Cleet mentioned that most people missed the Kevin Hart sentiment was he was saying he would beat his son if he was ever gay, which is a struggle that people who are gay have faced. Like literally walking out of clubs and getting beat up by these ridiculously idiot dudes just because you're gay. I'm gonna beat you with a pole. It's like that's an actual struggle that they went through. Exactly. So that's where I think he missed. But I believe 100% you deserve an opportunity to explain yourself. However, remember you are in the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
Right. So what your PR person is going to do is give you a statement that's going to hit certain points so that you can hit as many people as possible, and then you move forward. If you find yourself, and I've seen this happen, like when people get terrible comments and they try to respond to every bad comment. Every comment, it's like a hydra. Every one that you try to defeat, 5 more spit up.
5 million.
And it's like you can't ever defeat that. So why are we even trying? Give your wholesome statement and then move on. If anyone asked you about it before, hey, I made a statement about this. Please go and revisit the statement.
Yeah.
What Kevin Hart kept trying to do is just like, oh, you said that. All right, I'm gonna address it. But I don't have to address it. 5 more people pop up. 10 more people pop up. And it's like, dude. Yeah. And then you spent 5 months apologizing after saying you weren't going to apologize. So you just should apologize in the first place and did the Academy Awards. Nobody would have ever spoke about it again. But instead, we had a terrible, 5,000 person host academy, and people kept talking about it. It became the controversy for you.
These are those moments where authenticity backfires on you because his heart was like, I'm just going to get up and speak truthfully to the people. But what happens is when a person's coming to you, they don't really want the truth. They don't want an apology.
Fueled by
just want to be mad.
You have to give them, you almost got to give them the structured answer that they can't refute.
Whoa, buddy.
Refute.
Rewind it back. Drink some water. And try it again.
Yeah.
Refute.
Refute. There we go. Thank you, Doc. You know what I'm saying? Like that, and it sucks that you have to come from that perspective. But we all been in situations where no matter what you say, the person is just. They don't want the solution. They don't want a solution.
No, man.
So you dealing with these people like Bert saying, they're angry. So they don't really want him to just say, you know what, I'm wrong. Then they're like, oh, okay. Dang.
Yeah, because now
it's not enough. Michael Vick.
Yeah.
Right. So
now,
it's like,
now you gotta give half of your salary
still not enough
to something, and then on top of that, now you need to come out publicly and apologize to everybody that you offended. Even though you don't know who you offended, and then on top of that,
for something that their uncle, their brother, their neighbors,
you need to come to our city and do a free
that.
show, and then on top of that, you need to put out all of your phone records, and on top of that,
it never stops.
Yeah, it'll never go away.
By the way, this is a slight tangent. When you said when we were talking about the court of public opinion and doing things that made me think about Mr. Bloomberg and his most recent. He dropped out of presidential campaign. This guy spent $500 million on ads.
Yeah, man.
There are 350 million Americans. All right, so people were going off that this dude could have gave $1 million plus to every single American and still had money left over, and they were upset at him for spending his money.
Which was still incorrect. The math was still incorrect. He spent $500 million, meaning he spent $1 for 500 times. Well, he's 500 million times. There are 300 million people in over 300 million people in the United States, which means that he literally could have given everybody in the United States $1 and some change.
Mm-hmm. That math is correct.
Yeah.
Yes, because we keep hearing the millions, and it's like no, he only spent $1 million.
Right.
I mean, 500, $1 million.
$5 billion, then it would have been.
Yeah, he could have gave $1 million to 500 people. Let's just say it like that.
If it was $5 billion. See, man, look, this is what we call church math. I'm done.
But the truth is, it's court of public opinion. They get upset, and you could have gave $1 million.
And an incorrect statement.
The math is completely wrong. They didn't even fact check it. It's like, look, he's wasting money. He could have gave everybody in the United States $1 million. Do you know how much that is?
So, see, I'm gonna go a little deeper on this thing, man. There are two underlying circumstances surrounding Bloomberg and I'll say Kevin Hart. Bloomberg got his own money, so Bloomberg, when he came out with, when it surfaced and they attacked him, especially that first debate about his endorsing stop and frisk and broken windows policing and how it disproportionately impacted African Americans and people of color. Bloomberg wasn't very apologetic in a sense. He wasn't prepared that first debate.
No, he was.
Whereas you look at Kevin Hart wasn't initially, and then he had to later shift and become apologetic, or else his livelihood would have been
dangerously affected.
Exactly. So economic independence. Economic independence is the underlying factor. It really governs.
How much money you want to make, sir?
I said it.
It goes deeper.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's a great point, man.
Yeah.
Now, speaking on, I'm glad Dub shifted to a political atmosphere. We don't really get deep into politics on our show, but I did want to talk about something that's near and dear to us, and not necessarily because we're in this situation, but we're in the state of Florida. So the felony voter rights were restored, I want to say in 2018. Was it 2018?
It's in the 18 election.
Yeah, so November 2018. Since then, the rollout of it has been probably one of the most confusing things that I've ever seen. Outside of the medical marijuana that we voted for overwhelmingly, and that was it the same election?
I'm not sure if that was 18 midterms, but it could have been.
I think it was
the same one.
I think it was the same one because it was
because we had to vote for all of those.
Right.
Yeah.
So
like 10 of them or 11 of them.
The latest push has been to try to force before the felons get their voters right, before the people. I don't want to call them felons because they did their time. Right. They paid their debt to society. So these individuals, they're trying. The government is trying to block them and saying that they need to pay their restitutions. And some of them have, just outrageous restitutions that they're owed to pay back. And they're saying that they want them to pay those back before they get their voters' rights restored. Now, recently, there was a case that they overturned that ruling. So the voters actually have the ability to vote. But my thing is like, what are your thoughts on, our government trying to suppress those votes so vehemently, man? It's just very confusing to me. So I'm throwing that to y'all on the floor.
I'm gonna go ahead and give my vehement response. I just figured since he got on you, Cleve, I return it, bro. He has some equity right here,
man. Drink some water.
You're right now. You're right.
So, hey, look at here, man.
Hold on, man. How you say the word? Vehemently?
Yes. I believe so, man. I'm not a linguist.
Vehicle.
But
this always made me spit one on the mic, man.
Hey, bro, this Amendment 4 here in the state of Florida is it's great. Should have been passed, but of course it was objected by the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, and the legislature of Florida, even though it was overwhelmingly supported by voters in Florida. So, this thing it goes back. If you really want to look at the roots of felons being stripped of the right to vote, and Amendment 4, it only covers non-sexual felons, like non-violent sexual felons and non-murder felons. So really drug cases, stuff like that. Voter suppression is really the root of this conversation. And that goes back to categorizing someone as a felon. You restrict their ability to vote. So again, Michelle Alexander wrote a great book on this topic, The New Jim Crow. Man, a definite read. But anyway, in Florida, the population of adult felons in Florida, 1 out of every 10 adults in the state of Florida is a felon.
That's crazy.
1 out of every 10 adults. And I don't know if y'all have heard the saying that if America gets a cold, black people get the flu.
Yeah.
So 1 out of every 4 black people, males in Florida, is a felon.
I was almost one.
So
Crazy.
that's a huge number that you've stripped the right to vote from.
Let me give a little backstory on what I just said. I was almost one.
Ain't nobody judging, bro.
No. It was literally my case was it was a college fight. Happened. It was a football team, and we got into basically a bar fight, and somebody got hurt, and they didn't know who did it, so they accused me, and because they were the only person that they saw. So when I went to the court, they literally tried to charge me with assault with a deadly weapon, causing
great bodily harm,
and they wanted me to do 2 years probation. They wanted me to serve 30 days in jail. They wanted me to take anger management courses and all this stuff. And my public defender came out and said, "This is the offer. I think you should take it." And I looked at him and I said, "I didn't do any of this. And so, no, we're going to have to go to trial."
Yeah.
The very next offer that they came out to me, they said, "We'll reduce it to simple battery and time served." Because I had to spend a day in jail because they came and got me. And so they gave me time served, and they reduced it to a simple battery.
Gotcha.
But you could have, wow. So if you wouldn't have been,
if I would have been,
you'd listen to your public defender.
If I would have just said, "Listen, this is the best offer that they can give me," and I would have taken that, and I would have been a felon. And even though I didn't do anything,
record too, yeah, stupid,
so
man.
But yeah,
been stripped of the right to vote.
Go ahead.
No, you good. Again, we ain't judging you, bro. You should have taken them up on the anger management classes.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, man.
But yeah, man. So again, at the heart of Amendment 4 and at the heart of the categorizing individuals as felons is really voter suppression. That's at the heart of categorizing a person as a felon. And if you strip a community of this almost 25% of a voting block, that's a huge number that you are not allowing to vote. So that's a huge voice that community is stripped of. And so if you look at voting polling and voting data, when people come out and vote in numbers like in the 2008 election, it heavily favors Democrats. So if you look at the Florida legislature, which is heavily controlled by Republicans, that's who's opposing these bills, because there is a fear that if more people are allowed to vote, if we give these people their right to vote back, the minority is in jeopardy all of a sudden. They're trying to hold on to their power. So they will not fight to give these people their right to vote back. So that's really the underlying sentiment of this entire ordeal, is maintaining power, a minority maintaining power over the majority. So I think as of now, we've had some Supreme Court rulings on it. Some have been upheld. And really, the crux of it also is the implementation. They were like, well, once the amendment was passed, it should have been automatically instituted. But then the governor was like, no, well, we have to do X, Y, or Z. And he put in an addendum saying that they need to pay off all of their fines and fees, which is nothing but a poll tax. And in some states, they allow ex-felons to vote while they're paying those off. And I'm not trying to say they don't own them, but at the same time, some of them, like you said, did nothing but had to take a plea, really. So they're innocent. So I mean, it's a whole nother story. But
right.
Yeah, Amendment 4 was great. But again, anytime you try and give people more of a voice, which is your vote, it will always be contested by the minority who are in fear of losing power.
Yes, I agree that this is a voter suppression measure that has been taken by our government, and the truth is that it's strategic. Any government, any elected official that is in fear that they may not get the actual number in terms of voting. We'll do things like shut down polls. We'll do things like, hey, felons can't vote because, like Brian said, the statistics heavily favor one group of people. But I want to also look at the inverse, right? So in the 2016 election, Trump won Florida by about 113,000 votes, right? Black people who were not felons, who had the ability to vote, 379,000 in Miami didn't vote. That's not even the state, just did not vote. So when we're talking about like our ability to make change in what we want to see, yes, we need to fight things so that we give felons the ability to vote, because that's huge. But we just got to stop sitting on our behind at home like we don't affect stuff. Like, we affect it so drastically. And this is just in one state. I can go state by state. Wisconsin, they won by 23,000. 93,000 people in Milwaukee alone, black people, didn't vote. Michigan, Trump won by 11,000. In Detroit, 277,000 didn't vote. Right? So if there is a clear strategy to how we are going to really get our agenda pushed, like Brian said, like, you know, when blacks come out, we tend to heavily vote Democrat, right? That's just what we do. We had the highest turnout ever with 2008 and 2012 with Barack, or was it 2004, 2008? Gosh,
yeah, 8 and 12.
8 and 12. Okay, so 2008, 2012 when Barack came out. But what we're not doing now is like, we are literally, okay, it don't matter to me. All right, I'm just not gonna worry about it. And it's like, that is irresponsible. Right? That is something that we can directly affect, as opposed to doing what we do a lot of times, which is sitting back and looking at the TV and talk about how crazy this dude is on TV. It's like, we could have got out there, right? I mean, I could tell you, like, in amongst, and I have a fantastic group of friends and family. All of us vote. We all make sure each other voted. We know the polling places. We remind each other. We even get detailed rundowns by our very own Judge Smith over here on all of the issues, so that we can make sure we're not only voting, but we are educated in how we're voting. But we have got to do a better job at being more inclusive of ourselves and understanding that we have a voice, not just thinking I can just sit back and do nothing, because to sit back and do nothing, our stuff just doesn't get pushed forward. If anybody's going to fight for it, it has to be us.
Well, I think, and I know you want to jump in, Brian, I think one of the things that is prevalent with that is everyone doesn't have like a Judge Brian, so to speak, especially in our communities. No one is, for me, I'm from the inner city of Miami, and a lot of this stuff, like political stuff, is always kind of like far off. Like it's not translated into our culture, into our speech. So it's like, when it comes down to it, if you think about it that day, you go vote, but it's not like it's not translated to how it directly affects us in the inner city. You know what I mean? So I think in order for that to happen, I think more of the parties and the representatives, they need to have people, stronger representation in each of these inner cities to translate those issues that, said political person is talking about, and how that specifically affects their community. Because otherwise they check out. I don't care what's happening with the school system. I don't care about none of that stuff.
It's so distant. You don't see how it's directly relevant to your everyday life. And
if it's between me catching a bus to go to work and going to vote, and I'm gonna lose my job, I'm not gonna lose my job. I need to get to work to feed my kids. I don't care about, as long as that stuff. But if you're saying, you know what, when this person's policy is gonna give a new system where now there's a new bill where now you can get Uber and not have to catch the bus. Guess what? I can't come in today. I'm gonna use my PTO that day, because now when this person gets in, maybe it's gonna benefit me. But they don't see the direct connection. So that's why you see such a large number, because it's not hitting them on how it, like they can't. I know me, like in my parents and my family, they didn't comprehend at a macro level what's going on in the country. We live in a micro level. We're talking about, before we started the podcast, about the sports in South Florida. Like, think about that inner culture. Like there's high school football sports high school sports that is almost like its own world that in some cases is more, important to people in South Florida than what's happening in the NFL and the NBA. So there's such a subculture, and if no one's in there talking their language, then it doesn't translate. And that's just South Florida. The same as in Milwaukee, same as in all of these inner cities. So I just think ultimately that's the problem. We need for the Democrats, whatever the party is, they need to have those people who can translate. Like there's no translation happening. And because of that, it's like, oh, y'all don't get out and vote. Well, you're not talking my language. I don't know what you're even talking about. I don't understand those words. I don't care about those words. I don't care about those issues. How's it affecting me right now and me going to work and feeding my kids?
So that's good. I appreciate Cleet's commentary because it's very true. There is a distance between everyday life and the struggles that people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis and what these government officials are talking about. They don't see a correlation of how that impacts them. Yeah. But I think we got to go back to almost a fundamental level where which this government wasn't founded for the people. It's a representative democracy. They're like, look, matter of fact, when the government founded, black people couldn't vote, women couldn't vote, only white men who owned land could vote. Right. These were the people deemed worthy, educated enough, and acceptable to be able to even have a voice. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's not designed to be informative to the everyday citizen. Mm-hmm. If voting was so important at a national level, both parties would be advocating for making voting days, whether it's municipal or presidential, national holidays. Why should people have to go to work? If we truly cared about every vote counted, right. That should be a national holiday. But you chronicle throughout history, people will get fired for going to vote. Matter of fact, if you're looking at in that industrial revolutionary period, jobs will be at polling booths making sure you voted a certain way or else you gonna get fired. So there has never been this idealistic, beautiful sanctity of voting to where which, the nation really wants everybody to vote. That's not true. A small minority of power holders has an invested interest in how people vote, who votes. And transitioning from there, so that's thing number one. The power structure don't want everybody to vote, right? Which in turn breeds voter suppression. That's the big key. And as Wayne was talking, and I need to address these points. So first off, I 100% agree with Wayne. There has to be a self-realization and some self-responsibility that we got to vote and we got to make sure our surrounding groups are voting. Period. No excuse for us knowing anyone that didn't get out and vote. Correct. In any election. Right. Secondarily, we can't deny some of the realities that we are faced with here in our communities. It's a book. It's called White Rage by Carol Anderson. Carol Anderson. Oh, it's a phenomenal book. And she talks about and she makes a statement. She said, a lot of times we get lost in viewing the fire, but we ignore the kindling. So there was something that sparked this fire. And she talked about the response in America to black aspiration. And I thought that was really key. She talked about how Americans don't necessarily hate blacks or respond to just black presence. They respond to black aspiration. And looking at 2016, seeing an aspirational Obama, seeing the aspiration of, wow, we can do this. Voter suppression ramped up in 2008 and came to kind of this precipice in 2013 in that Holder versus Shelby County decision. And what that said was that kind of stripped the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So again, after the Civil War, when brothers got, was it the 14th Amendment or 15th, whichever one it is, I think it was 15th, when we got the right to vote, we had black legislatures. We had black congressmen. We had black representatives. Blacks and poor whites coalesced and began to enact change. By 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, it's early 1900s, with the rise of the KKK and with a couple of measures to get black congressmen out of Congress, you went back to all white legislatures. And again, the KKK's big prominent tactic, they were going to suppress vote. You were not going to vote. That's how they could control the government. That's how they could control resources. So when, I hear people say, yeah, man, our votes don't count. That's stupidity. You're buying into a narrative that the power structure, they want you to believe that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. If there was no power in voting, there would be no election. No one would vote. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that the biggest determinant or one of the biggest determinants in elections is money in politics. Tim Kuthner wrote a phenomenal book, Democracy versus Capitalism, and it really talks about money in politics. But we've got to understand that there's kindling for the reason that there is, in some cases, low voter turnout. She talks about Ferguson. We remember where Michael Brown was murdered in Ferguson. Ferguson has a black population of 67%. And in the election in Ferguson, I forget which year, my apologies, I should have had this written down, but I'm just thinking about it. They had a 6% black turnout.
That's crazy.
67%. But then she went on to say, well, as you look deeper, the Ferguson school system that Michael Brown was in, they have a rating system of how they categorize or how they rate schools, performance, graduation,
I remember that.
all that. On a scale of, I think, 140.
Single digits.
School got 10. 10 out of a possible 140. So she was like, a whole 2 generation of kids went through failing school systems, inadequate classrooms, inadequate resources. And she was like, this helps fuel this voter suppression. Your kids are in a destitute place. You can't even get educated properly. She's like, this is kindling. She's not saying that's the reason, but we've got to be able to see things like inadequate educational systems, inadequate facilities cause this destitute feeling that people like Click was saying, man, look, I ain't got time for this. I'm just literally trying to survive. She also talks about, again, the criminal justice system, how that plays a role in suppressing the psyche and of course, categorize people as felons. But like Tulia, Texas, Tom Coleman, dude won the Lawman of the Year in the state of Texas. Dude took down supposedly a drug ring in a state. This dude arrested 50% of the black male population in one city. Not only did he arrest them, they were convicted. One cop.
Goodness.
Dang.
One dude got 99 years. Another dude got 400 years. The kicker in this whole story was there were no witnesses. There's only one cop, no recordings. All of the evidence from every drug transaction that he made, he wrote on his leg. And when they asked him, okay, where's the evidence? He said he washed it off. All this got these people convicted. They were convicted. They felons. They in prison. This is in Tulia, Texas. So where it finally unraveled at, one of the ladies he accused had video footage of her at a bank depositing the check in Oklahoma. And then another description he gave of another dude was just completely this is not even the person. Like, the person was 6'4" with a big old afro. The dude 5'4", 100 pounds soaking wet. But this was after the convictions came for people. The convictions had already happened. So this is that whole war on drugs, which we know disproportionately affects black people. And so these are circumstances that aid in suppressing votes. This is kindling. Now, these aren't reasons to justify us not coming out and voting, but these are things that we are dealing with, that communities are dealing with, that have to be addressed.
So what would you say is, and this is completely anecdotal, I'm not expecting you to know this from any statistical measure, but just based off of your experience, you're living as an educated brother, what percentage of people fall into that? This I can't even associate with this. It doesn't relate to me, and my vote doesn't matter. I'm going to sit at home.
Man, I look at social media, and I had some family members like, yeah, man, our vote don't matter. So I'm like, this is kind of prevalent. And so what I'm looking at, I see almost like a 50-50 of people who are like, look, my vote doesn't matter, and people who like, hey, I got out and vote. So we need fundamental civics lessons, classes, structures within the United States as a whole. But I'm even more so an advocate of civic lessons for our community, taught by the pillar of the black community and institution that has always been at the forefront of black progress, and that's the black church. I'm an advocate.
Yeah.
And I don't, and to honestly, I mean, I really got this revelation this week. When I was at UCF, I went and sat in an African American studies class. It's probably why I did bad that semester. I was skipping my own class, but it is what it is, man. And I was going in, and Bobby Seale came and spoke. Bobby Seale was the founder of the Black Panther Party.
Yeah, man.
And he was asking for questions at the end, and I was like, hey, what is our generation's struggle? You all had yours. You know, y'all were fighting for basic human and civil rights. We wanted to be treated as people. It's like, we got those now. So I'm like, we kind of in this place that we really don't know. We want to be active, but what is it? And he said, that's a good question, young brother. He's like, that's deep. He was like, I can't tell you the answer. He was like, but it'll be revealed to you. Just keep living. He's like, it'll come. Like, honestly, I don't know. He's like, but you'll find out. And I would say, man, this is like legitimately like recent. I was like, man, economic independence, economic education is what our struggle has to be now. And if you look at probably the most depressing element within our community, it's poverty. Now, you got a couple, you got a lot of streams of consciousness as far as those reasons, like Tom Sowell and Walter Williams, two people that most blacks don't like because they feel they quote unquote sellouts. They make two very salient points talking about the disproportionate amount of babies born out of wedlock in our community. And that goes back to the report that LBJ ordains, the Kearney report, I believe in 68 or 65, one of them years. But that was something that they pointed to. It was like, hey, right now, the African-American wedlock percentage is like 5 times higher than the national average. Like, and if this doesn't stop, this will negatively impact your community. This was a report commissioned, like I said, in the 60s, the Kearney report. At the time when that report came out, brothers was up in arms. This is a racist report, yada, 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 yada. 40 years later.
Welp.
That's true. Because if you look at it from a basic economic standpoint,
you don't have enough money to pay for your kids.
2-parent households make more money than 1-parent households. That's simple economics.
It's
simple. Now, one of the things that I appreciate about the ministry we go to, there is a strong emphasis on marriage. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't look at it just from an economic standpoint, but it does.
It is cheaper to keep her.
That's but I mean, so that's like at a number. That's like one of the things I'm like, our church does really well on harping on marriage. Again, not for that point, just for the sanctity and the benefits of marriage that are chronicled scripturally.
Right.
We see scripturally, prosperity or money is mentioned numerous times in the Bible. Mm-hmm. These resources can allow us to lift our community up because the government won't. No. We are not the government's priority, nor should we be relying on the government to lift up our community. There has to be, we have to go back to a place to where which community was greater than self-identity, or we weren't as selfish. I mean, we came from a place where we have nothing but each other. Right. So we took care of each other. But as we integrated with society, and as James Baldwin would say, we integrated into a burning building. He wasn't really an advocate for integration, just equality. Mm-hmm. And that's an argument that's worth having. Did we really need to integrate in that capacity? Or did we really just need equal treatment and equal opportunity and equal access to economics? Because we could have did just fine. So again, that's another element to discuss. But once you integrate into a society that was heavily invested in capitalism and self interest, there was a degradation in community and more of an importance placed on my come up, not our come up, which is capitalism 101. It's all about me, period. Now I'm not anti-capitalist and I'm not a communist. There is, as MLK said, there is a good medium, because capitalism denies the community and socialism denies the individual. But there's an intersection where they coalesce, where you can have the innovation that capitalism births, and you can have a social element to where which we don't have this unnecessary poverty that socialism theoretically can give you. And that's that's where I'm at personally. There is not either or. It's not a polar extreme, not a zero-sum game. There's a happy intersection. But that's where our struggle is today. And I believe that the black church has to be a leader in it. And the reason I say I don't throw stones, because I just realize what I believe our struggle has to be now, and that's economic independence. Mm-hmm. And I believe, just like the church was the birthplace and the leading advocate for the civil rights movement, I believe that's now the black church's place in our communities to preach economic independence, economic prosperity. Again, this is not saying that all God wants is your money or your money. No. We have a responsibility to teach our people because, again, if America gets a cough, brothers get pneumonia. And so I think a study came out that said only 20% of Americans are really financially educated. So if only 20% of Americans are educated, how adversely is that impacting the African American community? And I would say greatly. Bert, you in financial services, we all, understand economics to a degree greater than most of our parents did. And so it's like, wait a minute. So we're knowledgeable. Are we leaving an inheritance for our children's, or are we living this spontaneous, instant gratification lifestyle that's prevalent in our community because we couldn't get gratified for hundreds of years? We always lived on this promise of soon and very soon. So finally, once we were able to get the opportunity to go out and buy something and not have to wait, I ain't knocking nobody for that. I'm not throwing stones at our community. Shoot, we was in bondage for 400 years. Yeah. Think about living your life thinking, man, one day. And finally, you get to a point to where, man, I can buy this today.
Today.
Yeah, today. You know what?
I'm a little.
I can understand that.
Listen, and there's nothing wrong with, the indulging, right? Go ahead and doing something special for you and your significant other. The challenge that comes with that, and I was just talking to my wife about this last night, it's the mindset that comes before you can actually live in that arena, in that era, right? Like you cannot be in a position where something is where you've been in bondage for a certain amount of time, you break free, and now that you're broken free, but you got to break through in your mind first. You can't just break through in doing the actual activity, because it's just like, everybody knows that person. They moved out of the hood, they moved to the suburbs, then you went and saw their house a few years later, and it looked like the house in the hood. Because the mindset didn't change. Yeah. They got the stuff, but the mindset didn't change. So it's important that we recognize those shifts, and I'm glad you shared that perspective. B, I think that it's critical to understand that while there is more work to be done in our communities to make sure that we're making these things relevant for our communities, we also have to have a responsibility of doing more. Like he said, 50-50 was like the split of people who understand, yep, this is important, but I'm not going to do it because my vote doesn't matter. Those are the people who I'm calling to arms, because it's like, hey, look, don't sit down and watch the news for 15 hours out of the day and talk about did you see, it's crazy. You see it all the time. Did you see what he did today? That president of your president, you see what he did? And I want to know, did you go vote?
I would challenge you to find that, or to realize that number of people who are just willingly not voting is far less than the people who don't vote because they don't see the association of how it's going to change. You know what I'm saying? So you got the people on social media who are loud. People,
especially in our communities, that they breed the discontent of, well, and I've heard several people say to me that, it don't matter who get in the White House, or it don't matter who we vote in, still gonna get screwed over, so it don't matter.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
People. Those are the loud people.
But that's why I asked Brian, what percentage would you say are those people who are actually, I can't see myself, I can't see you're not speaking my language, versus the people that actually know what's going on but choose not to be a part. He said 50-50.
I say it's and I tell you this, like I said, I'm speaking from a person from the inner city. There'll be times where I find out about voting after like a week afterwards because I'm just into my world, my culture.
So are you talking about yourself as an adult or yourself as a child?
Yeah, well, in my early adult years. I mean, I voted.
Idiot.
What? But I'm just saying, bro.
So you weren't registered to vote?
Think about young dudes, 19, 18, 19. They
I give you that.
They out in their life, man. They don't like they're trying to come up. They're not watching the news. They don't know what.
So I'm not talking about that age group because I understand that 100%. The age group that I'm talking about are the older, more educated people, right? Like the people.
Let's take some grandmas. Let's take some grandma and granddad. They may have voted in seasons, but now they're worried about getting their medicine and they're battling sickness. They're like they. This is a thing that's not prevalent, but there's a thing that's not prevalent. But in the hood, medication is expensive. So you always have one dude or a couple of dudes. They call them like I forgot the name. They're not a pharmacist, but they call them something. But basically, they selling their medicine.
Yeah, you said you finna snitch on somebody, man. No, be careful now.
This 20, 30 years. I don't even know if the person's still alive, but they would be selling their medicine. They selling their painkillers and stuff. And so you got people in there. They're getting their hustle on. Just like this inner community. They don't know what's going on in politics. They might watch the news and they see it, but like it's not connecting. So it's not connecting because it doesn't translate to them. So I'm talking about that number of people. I think is far greater than the people who know what's going on and saying I'm not going to vote.
So
that's
this is a
smaller number in my opinion.
It's really important because you were raised in their city, like born and raised, and my church was in the inner city. So and it goes to Brian's point. Our church was small, wasn't huge. We had speakers on the outside. It was pushed about how important voting was, right? So, and it wasn't just like one service, one time around election time. It was a consistent, and the churches in the Grove had rallies around voting. Right, so all the churches would get together. There like 7-8 churches would get together and talk to the communities about how important it was to vote. So I watched a lot of those people know, they knew.
No, you were talking at us. So I'm representing the people who are outside. My people didn't go to church, right? So we would have these churches with the speakers out, and I'm like, okay, here they go. These are the church folk. They want you to go vote.
So you came to voluntary events and
no, you would be in the park. They'll do stuff at the parks and stuff. So.
All right. Okay. We can go all day on this, but my thing is, I'm not. I know that we can go back and forth on this, but the main thing that I want to get from you guys today is how do we? Well, two-part question. Do you believe that black people are going to vote this year? And 2, if you do, what is your reason? Or if you don't think that they will, how do we get them to vote?
I'll be very brief. This will be, so when we talk about the 2016 election, first election that blacks were not covered under the 1965 Voting Rights Act, what happened? Voter turnout dropped. Those protections were in places because of previous overt voter suppression. That's why that 65 Voters' Rights Act took place, because they were actively trying to stop black people from voting. So when that act was passed by Congress, it was to prevent this from happening in the future. And it was happening, predominantly it affected states, Alabama, Mississippi, these states where they had active forces restricting poll access, physically beating people, district drawing, and making people have to produce these, take literacy tests, all these metrics and requirements that were unconstitutional. So that came in, but in 2013 that was struck down. So hey, y'all don't need to do this no more. We've moved past the age of trying to suppress votes, and so we don't need to do that anymore. The day the decision came down, man, several legislations passed. Passed acts trying to, again, make it harder for people to vote. Voter suppression, ID laws sounds innocuous, but like I said, that book by Carol Anderson, she's a professor at Emory. It's called White Rage. I mean, it chronicles like SB 14 out in Texas, the one in North Carolina that the Supreme Court, like, look, clearly y'all trying to discriminate. But the day that they rescinded that 65 Voting Act, boy, they went right at it because voter turnout, again, doesn't favor Republicans. So it's active again. Do I know if we're going to turn out? I don't know. I hope so. But there is, I don't know. I don't think the Democratic Party has done as good of a job as they did in 2008. Y'all remember get out the vote, like Puffy. Everybody was on it. Yeah. Again, that's because we saw that we saw Obama, and that was a very 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 invigorating
candidate.
Yeah, we saw something. We saw the possibility, and we knew the impact that it would have. Yeah. So yeah, but I hope so. That's where I end that. I can't give any concrete.
So you don't. What do you think that black people will turn out?
Well, I mean, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're gonna turn out. We vote in every election. I mean, do you think we'll have record numbers?
No, not record. But are we going to? Because last year it was the lowest, obviously, with the revision. We had the lowest turnout in like 25 years, 24 years, or something like that. So 10-15% due to obviously that happening and active voter suppression, and the other one is just because it was between Donald Trump and Hillary, and it was like, okay, well, whatever, right? So this year, are we going to have an average turnout? I guess would be the question.
I have no idea, no clue. I don't know.
I would say I don't think so. I don't think unless we did what Puffy and these guys did in 2008, we're not going to have that turnout because once again, to the point I was making is if we're not translating to problems and issues that affect black people, the insurmountable amount of black people that aren't turning out, then they're not going to come out. You're not putting it in there in terms that make sense to them. It's talking over their head. So I don't think so. And I think when Puffy and these guys got involved, I think the church is a portion to it. But there's some things there with people who don't go to church that they just feel like sometimes church people talk at them. So, when you get people who are their heroes, the Puffies, the rappers, right? All these people starting to talk and speak in their language, then they'll follow those guys. So if you can't get those people involved, and of course a lot of this stuff I'm talking about is from a younger generation standpoint, but I think just the young vote proportionally is just not involved either, right? So there's a big number of that's included in those numbers you talked about. So if we don't start to galvanize black people by translating, it's not that we aren't, intellectually able to understand what they're talking about. It's just our terminology and the way that we interact with information is different. And if you don't put it in the same way that makes sense to us, we ignore it because it's not important to our everyday life. So to answer the question, I think at this point, unless it just shifts for the rest of this year and you just get all these people rallying behind the Democratic candidate, then it's not. It's going to be about the same.
So I believe that it will be different than it has been in past years, and for two major reasons. First, in 2008 and 2012, you had Puffy, you had everybody with the rock to vote. They were going after a demographic of 18 to 24-year-olds. They were in colleges all across the nation. They went to college after college after college. They weren't for people who were 30 plus. I mean, people probably knew who Puffy was at the time, but that wasn't like their person. In 2016, LeBron, Jay-Z, all these people came out for Hillary. We still didn't turn out.
They didn't come out that hard though.
But she won the popular vote by 3 million. It's always
right.
Remember they didn't come out that hard as 2008, bro.
Right. I didn't say that they didn't, but I'm saying that
re-election is always easier than an initial. So yeah.
Right. So I think that the focus that was there, like you're going to have those people who are waiting to get down to the final two candidates to make their endorsement, right? I think if Biden wins the nomination, you're going to have everyone from, I think, the ages of 40 plus guaranteed in their mind we got to have Biden. Why? Because we have had 4 years of traumatic experience with Trump. So it's like this is the guy. I am tired. I'm going to make this happen. A lot of these same people who did not vote in the 2016 election will turn out for this election because they realize after 2016 my vote does matter.
I agree.
All right. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and come out. If Bernie wins, you're not going to have as many people who are 40 plus come out. But you should have record numbers for people who are under that because the majority of people under that have student loan debt. Right? So
I'm gonna open that thing up, bro. Hey, y'all need me to open for y'all?
Shoot. So, or either that or they have family members who are incarcerated because of marijuana usage or marijuana distribution, right? So you're going to have, I believe, record turnout this year because of what each candidate right now represents because it matters to them, right? Those issues that matter. For 35 plus, the issues that matter is like, this guy is racist. That's the issue that matters. It's nothing. We're not even going all the way down
voters
to
as a whole. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about black voters, right? Like black voters, I think will come out because if you talk about two groups of people that have been affected most by Trump being in the White House, or who have cared more, maybe not affected more, have cared more. It's been Latinos and it's us.
Yeah.
Right. We care more about because it's just like, dude, you're up there. You're talking about building a wall in Mexico, right? You got Mexicans dancing on the wall now. It's pretty comical. But you know, you've talked down Latinos for almost 4 years. You've made fun of people. You've had this polarizing events when you have black people coming to the White House, but then black people are calling them Uncle Tom for going to the White House. Yeah. So now these issues start to ring a little bit deeper. So it's like, okay, well, you know, and then you got this dude, he's been impeached. Now, obviously, in previous seasons, if you've been impeached, it actually helps you. Being impeached and not convicted, it actually helps you because it really galvanizes your base. But at the same time, if these other groups will actually, if Latinos come out, if we come out, like there's, I mean, I think that we won't come in 2008, 2012 record numbers, but we will beat the 2016 turnout, I believe, for sure.
Cool. I hope so, Doc. It's a good point.
Any last words? Mm-hmm. Man, if we can go on and on, like I said, this is we went a little over than the time we wanted to, but this is an important subject because
that's why I talk about it too much.
That's why because we get going, man. Dude. But yeah, you know what I mean. Just understand that your vote does matter, and you know what I mean. What you don't vote for, you'll end up complaining about it in the end. So get out there and do the right thing. You know, just go vote. Vote however you feel. I'm not telling you how to vote, but vote for what you believe in, and you know what I mean. Be okay with the results.
Who you voting for? Trump again?
Again.
You notice he was quiet.
This man is a habitual liar.
See, he didn't respond.
He did not respond. That's all right.
I did not vote for Trump.
Keep your professional your vote to yourself, man. You're not obligated to share it with nobody.
We are not.
So for myself, my boy Diderot, my boy Cleet the Geek, and my boy G Dub, we out.